Picture this: midnight in a Roman prison. Two men sing hymns while chained in stocks. Suddenly, the earth shakes violently. Doors burst open. Chains fall off. Coincidence? Or something beyond our understanding? Tonight, we dive into one of history's most debated prison breaks, when Paul and Silas walked free from Philippi's jail. Was it geology or divinity that shattered those chains? The story begins in Philippi, a Roman colony that stands as a jewel in the empire's crown. This isn't just any city. It's where Mark Antony and Octavian defeated Brutus and Cassius, where Roman veterans settled to enjoy the privileges of citizenship. The streets echo with Latin commands. Roman law governs every transaction, and imperial eagles cast their shadows over marble forums. Into this bastion of Roman power walked two Jewish men with a message that would shake the very foundations of the empire. Paul and Silas arrived not as criminals, but as messengers carrying what they believed to be divine truth. Their mission transcends politics or economics. They're announcing the arrival of a different kind of kingdom, one that operates by entirely different principles than Rome's iron-fisted rule. But revolution, even spiritual revolution, comes with a price. Their first miracle in Philippi becomes their downfall. A slave girl, possessed by what locals called a python spirit, follows them for days, crying out about their divine message. Her supernatural proclamations might seem like free advertising, but Paul recognizes something darker at work. When he commands the spirit to leave her, the girl is instantly freed, but so are her owners from their source of income. This wasn't just a healing. It was an economic earthquake that preceded the literal one. The girl's owners had built their wealth on her supernatural abilities, charging premium prices for prophecies that came from beyond the veil. Paul's intervention didn't just heal a person. It dismantled an entire business model built on spiritual exploitation. The magistrates don't hesitate. Without trial, without investigation, without even hearing Paul's Roman citizenship claims, they ordered the apostle stripped, beaten with rods, and thrown into the innermost prison. The beating itself tells us something crucial. This was not routine punishment, but a violent attempt to break men who dared challenge the system. The rods tear flesh, but they cannot touch whatever it is that drives these men forward. The innermost prison represents more than physical confinement. Archaeological excavations reveal that Roman prisons were engineered for psychological torture. No windows, no light, walls that weep with moisture, air thick with the smell of human desperation. The stocks don't just prevent escape. They're designed to cause constant pain, forcing the body into unnatural positions that make rest impossible. This wasn't just imprisonment. It was a calculated assault on human dignity, designed to break both body and spirit. Yet here, in humanity's darkest hour, something extraordinary begins to unfold. The foundation of this story isn't built on human strength, political maneuvering, or clever legal defense. Instead, it rests on an unshakable faith that transcends physical circumstances. As night falls over Philippi, two bloodied men prepare to demonstrate that some forces cannot be contained by walls, chains, or human authority. Their response to injustice would become the catalyst for one of history's most mysterious events. At midnight, while other prisoners lay in despair, Paul and Silas do the unthinkable. They begin to sing, not whispered prayers of complaint, not muffled curses against their captors, but audible hymns of praise that echo through the stone corridors like a supernatural sound system. The acoustics of Roman prisons weren't designed for music. They were engineered to amplify suffering, to make every groan and sob echo as a reminder of Roman power. Yet these two men transformed the architecture of oppression into an amphitheater of worship. The other prisoners listen in amazement, their own chains seeming to grow heavier as they witness something they cannot comprehend. Who sings in chains? Who finds melody in misery? Who discovers harmony in the heart of injustice? This isn't the behavior of ordinary men, and everyone in that prison knows it. Their voices carry something that transcends their circumstances, a confidence that suggests they know something their captors don't, something that makes physical chains irrelevant. Consider what it takes to sing in that moment. Hours earlier, their backs were torn open by Roman rods. The wounds are still fresh, blood still seeping through torn clothing. Their feet are locked in stocks designed to prevent any comfortable position. The air is thick with the stench of human waste and desperation. Yet they choose to fill that poisoned atmosphere with praise. It's not just counterintuitive. It's supernatural. Archaeological evidence shows Roman prisons were engineered as instruments of psychological warfare. The innermost prison was deliberately windowless, timeless, hopeless. Prisoners were meant to lose track of day and night, to forget their own identities under the weight of despair. The Romans understood that breaking the human spirit was more effective than breaking the body. Yet Paul and Silas refused to be broken. Instead, they become the breakers, shattering the prison's intended psychological effect with something the Romans never anticipated. Their praise becomes a declaration of independence, not from Rome's political authority, but from the assumption that circumstances determine destiny. They read demonstrating that neither Rome's power nor physical suffering can touch the deepest part of who they are. The guards hear it and grow nervous. Prisoners don't sing unless they know something their captors don't. The other prisoners hear it and wonder if these men have lost their minds or found something worth more than freedom itself. Even the stones seem to listen. The ancient world understood that sound carries power, that certain frequencies can affect matter itself. Musicians knew that the right note could shatter glass, that resonance could bring down walls. But this goes deeper than acoustics. This midnight concert becomes the prelude to an event that would challenge every natural law the Romans thought they understood. In that dark prison, praise becomes the key that would soon unlock more than just prison doors. It would unlock questions about the very nature of reality itself. Then it happens. At the peak of their worship, when their voices reach a crescendo that seems to pierce heaven itself, the ground beneath Philippi convulses with violent, purposeful power. This isn't the gentle tremor that rocks sleepy citizens awake. It is an earthquake that shakes the prison's foundations as if the earth itself has suddenly developed consciousness and decided to join the midnight rebellion. Every door in the complex flies open simultaneously, not just Paul and Silas's cell, but every locked barrier in the entire facility. The massive wooden beams that bar the exit splinter and crack. Iron hinges, forged in Roman foundries and designed to last centuries, twist and snap like twigs. Every chain, every shackle, every binding falls away from every prisoner as if the metal has suddenly forgotten its purpose. The timing is impossible to ignore, the precision impossible to explain away. Modern seismologists can tell us exactly how earthquakes work. Tectonic plates build pressure over decades or centuries. When the stress exceeds the rock's capacity to hold, it releases catastrophically. The Aegean region where Philippi sits is indeed seismically active, part of a complex system where the African plate pushes against the Eurasian plate. Fault lines run beneath the ancient city like underground highways of potential destruction. From a purely geological perspective, an earthquake here isn't impossible. It's predictable. But the specificity of this event defies every natural explanation seismologists offer. Earthquakes don't distinguish between doors and walls, between chains and foundations, between what should open and what should remain closed. Natural seismic events follow physical laws. They shake everything equally, destroy indiscriminately, and leave behind predictable patterns of damage. This earthquake seems to possess intelligence, targeting only the instruments of bondage, while leaving the structure intact enough for conversation to continue. The Roman engineers who built this prison understood earthquakes. They'd experienced them before, planned for them, built with massive stones and deep foundations specifically to withstand seismic activity. Roman construction techniques were legendary for their durability. Many Roman buildings still stand today, 2 millennia later, testament to their engineering expertise. Yet this quake seems to penetrate their defenses with surgical precision, affecting only what needed to be affected. More mysterious still is what doesn't happen. The walls crack, but don't collapse. The ceiling holds, though dust rains down like indoor snow. The floor splits, but doesn't swallow. It's as if nature itself distinguishes between liberation and destruction, between setting captives free and causing chaos. The earthquake becomes a character in this drama, responding to human praise as if the very earth recognizes something divine in their voices and decides to add its own voice to their midnight chorus. Scientists studying earthquake mechanics have identified phenomena they can't fully explain. Seismic events that seem to respond to human activity, fault releases that correlate with human stress in ways that exceed statistical probability. Perhaps what happened in Philippi represents the extreme end of a spectrum we're only beginning to understand, where consciousness and geology intersect in ways our materialist assumptions cannot accommodate. When the earthquake stops and the earth settles back into silence, the Roman jailer awakens to a nightmare that shatters his understanding of reality. Every prison door stands open like gaping mouths mocking his authority. In Roman military culture, this scenario has only one outcome: certain death. Guards who lose prisoners don't receive reprimands or demotions. They face execution. The principle is simple and brutal. If you cannot keep Rome's enemies contained, you become Rome's enemy. Drawing his sword with hands that shake not from cowardice, but from the weight of absolute certainty about his fate, he prepares to choose suicide over the humiliation of execution. Roman honor codes considered self-inflicted death preferable to disgrace. It's a practical decision, really. Death by his own hand would at least spare his family the shame of his public execution. The blade touches his throat when Paul's voice cuts through the darkness like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. "Don't harm yourself. We're all here." This moment reveals the earthquake's true nature more clearly than any seismic measurement could. If this were merely a geological event, random tectonic release with fortunate timing, every rational prisoner would have fled into the night. The doors are open, the chains are broken, the guards are unconscious or confused. It's the perfect escape opportunity, the kind prisoners dream about for years. Yet something about Paul and Silas' response to their liberation creates a gravitational field of integrity that holds everyone in place. The jailer, still trembling from his near suicide, calls for lights and rushes into the prison, expecting to find empty cells and evidence of mass escape. Instead, he discovers something that violates every assumption about human nature he's learned in decades of military service. Not only are Paul and Silas still there, but apparently every other prisoner has remained as well. This isn't just unusual, it's unprecedented in the history of Roman corrections. He falls before Paul and Silas, his knees hitting the stone floor with a sound that echoes through the corridor. This Roman officer, trained in pragmatic military thinking, conditioned to see the world through the lens of power and control, recognizes he's witnessing something that exceeds the boundaries of his experience. His worldview, built on Roman supremacy, physical force, and natural law, crumbles as completely as his prison doors opened. The question that emerges from his lips becomes one of history's most profound inquiries. What must I do to be saved? Notice what he doesn't ask. He doesn't demand explanations about earthquake timing or geological mechanics. He doesn't question the prisoners about their escape plans or interrogate Paul about his methods. He doesn't even ask about the immediate practical concerns, what to report to his superiors, how to explain the situation, how to rebuild the prison infrastructure. Instead, he asks about salvation. This hardened Roman soldier, surrounded by the evidence of supernatural intervention, cuts straight to the existential heart of the matter. He recognizes that whatever force capable of orchestrating this precision earthquake, this selective liberation, this mass voluntary captivity, represents something his soul needs more than his mind can understand. The earthquake has become a revelation, not just of divine power, but of human need that transcends physical circumstances. Ultimately, the earthquake at Philippi confronts us with the boundaries of human knowledge. We can measure seismic waves, analyze geological data, and calculate probabilities. We can map every fault line in the Aegean. But we cannot quantify the relationship between desperate prayer and natural response, between faith and physics, between the human heart and the earth's foundations. This story suggests that reality operates on multiple levels simultaneously: scientific and spiritual, measurable and mysterious. The earthquake freed Paul and Silas physically, but it also liberated the jailer spiritually and challenges us intellectually. It reminds us that existence contains dimensions that transcend our instruments and exceed our equations. Perhaps the most honest response isn't to explain away the mystery or defend it dogmatically, but to stand in wonder before the possibility that we live in a universe far more responsive and alive than our limited perspective can fully grasp. The earthquake at Philippi becomes a metaphor for all the moments when reality exceeds our expectations, when the impossible becomes inevitable, and when the foundations of our understanding shake just enough to let new light shine through the cracks. So what freed Paul and Silas that midnight in Philippi? An earthquake, certainly. But was it mere geological coincidence or something more? Perhaps the question itself reveals our limitation, the assumption that these must be mutually exclusive. Maybe the earth itself was listening to their praise, responding to something deeper than we yet understand. The mystery remains, and maybe that's exactly as it should be. Today, seismologists study the Philippi region with sophisticated instruments. They map fault lines, measure stress patterns, and predict earthquake probabilities. Their data confirms the area's seismic activity. Earthquakes do occur here. Yet the precision of this biblical earthquake continues to perplex. Modern believers point to countless stories of unusual natural events coinciding with spiritual moments: storms calming during prayer, medical recoveries defying prognosis, circumstances aligning in statistically impossible ways. Skeptics counter with probability theory and confirmation bias, arguing that humans naturally seek patterns and meaning in random events. But between these positions lies a more fascinating question. What if the boundary between natural and supernatural is not as clear as we assume? Quantum physics reveals reality's strange responsiveness to observation. Ecology shows us interconnected systems where small changes cascade into large effects. Perhaps the earthquake at Philippi represents something we're only beginning to understand: a universe more participatory, more responsive to consciousness than our materialist assumptions allow. The story doesn't ask us to abandon science or embrace superstition. Instead, it invites us to consider whether our categories of natural and supernatural might be inadequate to describe the full spectrum of reality.